300,000 horses generate the same amount of power as an Airbus A380. Now, the 18th century inventor James Watt, when he was trying to convince people to get on board with the idea of his newly invented steam turbine engines, realized the best way to get people open to the idea was to use the reference they were already familiar with, the power of horses. This is where we get the whole idea of horsepower from. In this video, I'm going to show you why humans aren't actually afraid of change, but instead it is loss and the loss of certainty that typically causes us to dig our heels in. I'm going to give you 3 tips, 3 ideas for lessening that loss of uncertainty. My name's Michael McQueen. I'm a best-selling author who works with Fortune 500 brands around innovation, leadership, and adapting to change. Humans are afraid of change. We've heard that so many times over the years, but this might surprise you. It is not the fear of change that stops us from changing. It is the fear of loss. And there are 3 losses that stop us from being willing to consider new ideas or approaches or perspectives. Those 3 fears: the fear of losing power, the second is the fear of losing dignity, and the third is the fear of losing certainty. Do you know, as humans, we'll often choose unhappiness over uncertainty. We'll stay in roles or relationships or ways of doing things that aren't great, that we aren't enjoying, that aren't working for us, but we know them. They are familiar. I saw this very dynamic play out recently with a client who had spent a huge amount of money developing a new back-end system for their sales team. Now, the system they had used previously, they'd been using for decades, and it was clunky. It didn't work very well. It wasn't built for an e-commerce age. Now, speaking with this client, they were frustrated. They're like, we've spent so much money. We've built a brilliant system. Why can't our people see it? Why are they so afraid of change? And I said, well, it's probably not the change that they're resisting. It's the sense of uncertainty. At least they knew how the old system worked. See, the challenge for this client wasn't to upsell the benefits of change, but to lessen the loss that was associated with adopting something new. Now, so many of us are in the business of trying to get other people to consider changing. You might be a leader with a team that you need to adopt a new approach. Or maybe you're trying to get a spouse or a partner, or maybe your kids to consider changing. Maybe it's you. Maybe you know you need to change, but you feel that sense of fear, that sense of uncertainty, not wanting to lose the power, or maybe the hit to your ego if you change. How do you, rather than selling the benefits of change, lessen the loss? I want to give you 3 keys to doing just that. Number 1, the first key is to emphasize the familiar. You want to show people that the change is not a break from the past, but a continuation of it. Now, this same technique is what James Cameron used when he was pitching Aliens, the movie franchise, to get funding in order to be produced. People were struggling to get their heads around the concept of this movie, so how did he describe it? It's like Jaws, but in space. People knew what Jaws was. Suddenly they had a category to make sense of something that was unfamiliar. In a lot of the strategy work I'm doing with educators right now, one of the big issues they're facing is students using ChatGPT to write assessments. And as I'm working with teachers, my challenge to them is this: what if an AI model is just like the modern day pocket calculator? It's not going to take the role of having to think for yourself and learn. I mean, even pocket calculators, you've got to learn how to do basic arithmetic. Then you can use a calculator as a tool once you've got the basics down pat. And what I find with teachers is when you frame this new technology in reference to something they understand already, all of a sudden their minds begin to open and change. The second key to lessening the loss of uncertainty is to choose your words carefully. The words we use can change the entire meaning of everything else we're communicating. For example, consider the difference between secondhand and pre-loved, or mining and resource exploration. What about gambling versus gaming? Just simply changing the word changes the entire tone and the inference. I saw this very dynamic play out recently at a conference I was speaking at in the Bowen Basin, where 1/3 of Australia's steel-making coal is dug out of the ground. And yet it was also the location for a conference about climate change. And the name of this conference was the Decarbonisation Summit. And during a panel discussion after my keynote, the conversation of why people might be resistant to the changes being suggested came up. One of the panelists had a genius insight. She said, "Can I be honest? I think the name of this event is half the challenge. It's the Decarbonisation Summit. We are talking about what we're taking away from people, we're taking away from the economy, rather than building what could be." And I thought she was so absolutely bang on. We've got to be so careful. The language we use can trigger that sense of loss rather than a sense of gain or hope. The third key to reducing the fear associated with losing certainty is to account for the cost of change. Now, of all the things you need to make decisions about when you're an adult, I think one of the hardest decisions is which mattress you should buy. A little while back, it was time to upgrade our mattress, and my wife and I did what you typically do. We went to the stores, we tried a whole pile of them out, but it's awkward. You lie on this mattress in a brightly lit room for about 2 minutes. You have to decide the thing you're going to sleep on for the next 10 years. And we found one mattress that we were told was like the gold standard. So we saved up, we bought this mattress, and it was unreal for about 3 weeks. At that point, it started to what they call settle in. I then found out this is normal for this type of mattress, and it went from being a great, comfortable sleep to like sleeping in quicksand, and I hated this thing. Now, I've hated this mattress for almost 2 years. And recently I tallied up that I'd spent more on chiropractor and osteopath appointments to fix my neck and back because of this mattress than I had spent on the mattress itself. And yet, why do I hold on to it? Because we'd spent so much on it, and I'd told so many other people about it. My ego is involved. This is the sunk cost fallacy. And even if you know about it, we are all so prone to it. We have ideas or perspectives that we've invested so much of ourself in for so long, and then a better option comes along. Updated information, and we're caused to have to change our mind or update our beliefs, but we have to abandon something from the past in order to do that. There is a cost associated with this. The key to overcoming this is you need to give people the grace and the space to admit they may have been wrong without having to admit they must have been an idiot. Maybe a view, an approach, a way of doing things was right once, but it's not right now. That doesn't mean you're wrong. That just means that you've grown and that times have changed. The reality is there's a cost in changing, but the cost of not changing is almost always higher.